Our next presenter is a good friend of mine who's been organizing in so many different ways. And when I sit here and think about all the things we've done over the years, from giant banners spread across in Philadelphia, telling people that government is organized crime and things like that, it's been really beautiful. He also is an author, presenter. He organizes the Voluntaryism conference, which just happened in Sedona a couple of months ago. So many other great things. And today he's going to talk to us about government, what it is, and whether or not it's necessary. So please do make some noise. Give a big round of applause to Etienne de Lebuetti squared.
So my name is Etienne de Lebuetti squared. That is my novel view. It's right here. Testing. All right, there we go. So welcome. My name is Etienne de Lebuetti squared. I'm the founder of the Art of Liberty Foundation. We are a startup public policy organization that is exposing the illegitimacy and the criminality of government from a principled voluntarist standpoint. If you don't know what a voluntarist is, I'm about to break it down for you. But the short version is that, hold on, let me just go on. So how do I advance these slides? I found it, yeah. So I'm best known for a book called Government, the Biggest Scam in History Exposed, where I make the case that government is best thought of as a technique for robbing and controlling populations. It is always illegitimate. It is impossible to have a legitimate, moral, logical government, and I'll get into that in a second. And so if John told you that you had to obey him or he would violate you, that would be wrong. If John claims that because he and his friends are in the majority and you must obey him or be punished, that would still be wrong. Even if John and his friends are able to trick, indoctrinate, propagandize, and pay off enough people to vote for an institution to work on their behalf, and they all claim that you must obey its dictates or be punished, it would still be wrong. And if you can understand this basic concept, then you understand why government neither has the legitimate or lawful right to violate you just because some people decide to vote for it in rigged elections. Now, if we don't have government, then what's the alternative to government? And that is something popularly known as voluntarism. And in short, voluntarism is the common sense idea that all human associations must be voluntary, that nobody has the right to use violence or extortion on anybody else, even if they're in the minority, even if they're quote unquote a government. And that the fact that they're using violence and extortion on peaceful people is kind of a de facto proof that they are illegitimate on its face. There's also a kind of recognition that the world is a self-organizing system. It produces something called spontaneous order, and everything the government does would be done better, faster, and cheaper by the free market, by mutual aid societies, by nonprofits, by insurance companies, by co-ops, by genuine charities. And we're going to kind of dig a little bit deeper into that concept here. Now, first of all, we'll talk about the political spectrum that most people learned about in school or from the monopoly media. And that is, there is communism on the far, far left, and there's fascism on the far, far right. And in between those, there's Republicans on the right, Democrats on the right, and moderates in the middle. But really, the reality of it is that you have total tyranny on the left-hand side, and then you make your way through socialism, liberalism, moderate, we'll call it conservative, we'll call it libertarian, until you get to voluntarism, and that's total freedom. And so that if you wanted to look at the political spectrum that way, you would have communism and fascism as total tyranny, and you would have voluntarism as total freedom. Now, a little bit of a more kind of extensive way of understanding a political landscape is something called the Nolan chart, which was invented by an MIT student that realized the fallacy of the fake, what I like to call the fake left-right paradigm. And so what he did is he created this popularly known as the Diamond chart or the Nolan chart or the world's smallest political quiz. It's popularized by the advocates for self-government, and you can actually take the quiz on their website. And on the left-hand side, there's a personal freedom scale, and on the right-hand side, there is a economic freedom scale. And so if you think about it, liberals, they like a lot of personal freedom. So they're, gay marriage is fine, legalization of drugs is fine, all of these things are fine, but they don't favor a lot of economic freedom. We need to have taxes and we need to have regulations, and the government needs to control the economy. And so that would, on this scale, if you're very, very high on personal freedom and very low on economic freedom, you're in the left-hand quadrant. Now, Republicans are the exact opposite. Republicans like lots of economic freedom, low tariffs, low taxation, low government regulation, but they're not really that keen on personal freedom. So we've got to make drugs illegal and gambling illegal and prostitution illegal, and people can't make their own decisions. Daddy government has to do that. Even if they're not harming anybody else, the government has to abridge their personal freedoms for their own good. And so in that, it makes sense. Now, what if you're for maximum economic freedom and you're for maximum personal freedom? Well, that puts you into the libertarian quadrant on the top. And the very top, there is voluntarism for maximum personal freedom and maximum economic freedom. Now there's a chasm. So I kind of created a little chasm there. And so you can see how there's a space between voluntarists and libertarians. And what that space represents is everybody above the line believes that government is illegitimate, undesirable, and unnecessary, and everybody below that line thinks that government is legitimate, desirable, and necessary. Now, this is a slide that I borrowed from my friend John Bush right here, and I pro-modified it a little bit, and I didn't realize it was his, or I would have given him credit in the slide, but I wanted to call him out. But what he pointed out is that, if you listen to the monopoly media, which my book, Government, the Biggest Scam in History, breaks down how it's the government, the media, and academia have been monopolized to give the world kind of a fake view of what's really going on, the legitimacy of government, and other things. They would have you believe that Donald Trump is, to the right and Kamala Harris is to the left, but really that line extends from total tyranny again to real freedom. And you've got Mao and Hitler and Stalin on the, kind of the far left near total tyranny. You've got Donald Trump and Kamala in the Overton window of the middle. You've got Ron Paul more towards real freedom, and then you've got myself as an example of someone that supports voluntarism, which is real freedom. And I like, when I say real freedom, I like to highlight it, I like to underline it, I like to bold it and italicize it. But hopefully today, I hope you'll take that aside and step back as an adult and really open your mind and say, is government really legitimate, desirable, and necessary? And if it's not, then how would we organize society? How would things get done? And we're about to talk about that right now. The last thing I'm going to talk about is my upcoming book is called Voluntaryism, How the Only Ism, Fair for Everyone, Leads to Harmony, Prosperity, and Good Karma for All. And what I mean by that is every other political ism, whether it's communism, whether it's socialism, whether it's democratic republicanism, all of those other isms, there's a ruling class, whether it's a monarchy or whether it's a senate or whether it's an elected parliament or whatever it is, that has rights that you don't, that has the ability to use violence and extortion on society, that has the ability, that gets an exception for morality, which is illogical and immoral and doesn't really make any sense. And so on the kind of right-hand side of the slide, we're comparing voluntarism to minarchism, conservatism, socialism, and communism. And minarchists are willing to act violently on peaceful people to acquire fire protection and police and the military and the courts. And then that box is subsumed in the box for conservatives, and they're willing to use violence for all those things, plus unemployment insurance and retirement insurance and limited health care and limited housing. And then those two boxes are in the middle of socialism, and they're willing to use violence for universal health care. And communists are willing to use violence for everything in all of the boxes. And then voluntarists are there at the bottom, and they're not willing to use violence on peaceful people. They will seek to acquire desired services through voluntary relationships. Now, if we're not going to have a government, who's going to protect the people? Who's going to look after the poor, the needy, the disadvantaged, the downtrodden, the people that have been disadvantaged by history and some of these governments along the way? And luckily, what economics teaches us is that there's a number of different market mechanisms that provide public goods, what we would consider public goods, many things that the governments do for us today, for free, without any violence, extortion, or whatever. Some of these are called spontaneous order, which I touched on a little bit ago, which is the idea that order emerges out of not order. That you can have order without somebody at the top of society using a gun to hierarchically control everybody else within the society. The invisible hand is well known in economics. It was popularized by Adam Smith. I've got his quote right here, which is probably one of the most well-known quotes in all of economics. It's not from the benevolence of the butcher or the brewer or the baker that we expect our dinner, but from their regard to their own interest. And what that means is that New York City wakes up to hot bagels and hot coffee, not because the baker loves you, but because the baker wants to put food on his own table and wants to improve the lot for his own family. And he provides services to society, and you benefit from that without, again, any kind of hierarchical control. Market competition is another well-known economic principle that says, yes, so the brewer, the butcher, the brewer, and the baker, they all want to improve their lot in life, but what's to stop them from charging $25 for a cup of coffee or $25 for a loaf of bread? Well, there's other brewers and bakers and butchers that are willing to sell it cheaper, and then that market competition kind of balances out the desire for the independent merchant to maximize their own profit, while at the same time they're still providing that good and service at a fair price that is set by the market across different specific geographies and markets, and against different currencies, and that will balance itself and provide a fair in most cases a fair price for people that are consumers. Capital formation is the idea that when you save your own money and you invest it, you're generally investing it in places that you understand, industries that you understand. Most entrepreneurs, they understand their own industry. They see where there's a market opportunity. They invest their own capital. They buy the means of production. They provide the means of production to people that may not have any capital and may not have any skills to assist them. They provide jobs, and that they're the best people to make market decisions, definitely not a government in Washington, D.C. The discipline of constant dealings is one of my favorite little principles of economics. And this is the idea that, yes, merchants might cheat you. The gas station might sell you 0.85 of a gallon of gas instead of a full gallon because they calibrate their pumps wrong, or the guy that's running a dairy might take a hose of water and put it into his milk tank and be making extra milk. But for the most part, nobody does that. And the reason that most merchants don't do that is because they've got to, if they get caught, then they lose their valuable business. That knowledge spreads through society. People aren't going to buy their milk. People aren't going to buy their gas. Nobody's going to be going to do business with them. And so even though many people in the market could cheat, for the most part, they don't cheat, because if that gets out, it ruins their businesses. And innovation and productivity improvements reduce the cost of the luxuries and necessities of life. And so one of the biggest problems that we have in the economy right now is we've got a crooked monetary system. And so the organized crime government got together with the banks, and in 1913 they lobbied and bribed Congress, and they passed the Federal Reserve Act, which gave the banks the ability to engage in something called fractional reserve banking. And fractional reserve banking is when you go to a bank and you get a car loan or a commercial loan or a mortgage. They're not loaning you depositor money. They're just tickling the keyboard and they're crediting your account with digital dollars, even though that's inflationary, and even though that's stealing the value out of your own money, out of everybody else's money. And so that, absent that crooked banking system, innovations and productivity improvements should be reducing the cost of everything that you buy in the market. Everything should be cheaper. Every single year you should be buying more and more and more with your dollars, but instead prices are going up because the organized crime banks are stealing the value out of everybody else's money. One of my favorite examples of innovations and productivity improvements is there's a couple of different companies in the market that actually make a giant sail that goes on commercial ships and reduces the cost. So you can just take the sail, install it on an ocean-going vessel, and it'll save, I think it's like 3.3 tons of fuel a day off the cost of an ocean-going vessel. And so people that use that technology, they're able to cut the amount that they're able to charge for ocean-going trips, and extend a rebate to their customers to gain more market share in the market. And then that reduces the costs that you pay for goods and services if we didn't have an organized crime bank and organized crime government. Now, at the same time that the free market and freedom and innovation and improvements make everybody richer, government makes everybody poorer. And some of the ways it does is monopolies. The Art of Liberty Foundation, my book, Government, the Biggest Scam in History, is usually the best-selling book at almost every conference we go to. I don't have any books to sell because I shipped the books from my distribution center in New Hampshire to my house in Memphis, Tennessee. We gave the post office 10 days to get it there. They got it there in 11. It arrived the day after I left. And I'm going to lose $750 to the $1,000 that we would have made selling books in this audience. Everybody here would have gotten to get the book without having to pay shipping and handling. And it's just and now take that one example and multiply that by everybody else that has to use the postal service. When I gave this talk in Sedona a couple of weeks ago or months ago, my assistant had used the U.S. Postal Service's next day service to send a banner for the front of the podium, and it didn't get there in time, and so we had no banner for the podium. It just goes on and on and on. My fault for shipping the books through the post office. I thought 10 days would surely do it. My bad. But that, just imagine what that costs everybody in the society. Economic misallocation is when the government spends your money on what they think you deserve, whether that's green technologies like Solyndra, where they lost $500 million, whether it's buying a website for Obamacare for almost $1 billion from a company run by one of Michelle Obama's friends in college, whether it's warfare that takes billions and billions and billions of dollars of your tax money and blows up empty valleys in Afghanistan or, Iraq or wherever it is, price and capital controls, central planning, inflationary monopoly money, tariffs, trade barriers, import-export quotas, bailouts, and subsidies for failing businesses. These are all examples of where the government is making the average person poorer at the same time that the market is making everybody richer. Now, another example of that is government waste, fraud, and abuse, and it is legendary. It is frankly stunning in how much money the government wastes of the average person's money without any care for the time and the effort and the toil and the blood and the sweat and the tears that you put into earning that money. They will just throw it away in the most ridiculous ways. This is just a couple of examples. I could have gone on for slide after slide after slide. New York City spent $2 million for a 4-toilet park bathroom. San Francisco spent $1.7 million for a single 150 square foot toilet. One single toilet. The Pentagon has been caught spending $1,280 for coffee cups, $74,000 for aluminum ladders, $170 for flashlights, $13,900 for a chair, $400,000 for F-35 helmets. Every single F-35 helmet costs $400,000. $10,000 for toilet seats. The picture right there is Florida Congressman Mike Waltz grilling the head of the Air Force about why they're spending $90,000 for a bag of bushings that you could buy on the open market for $100. And so we're getting absolutely screwed by government. Now, when I say that everything will be provided by the free market and that there's something called spontaneous order, that's not something that I'm just saying pie in the sky and, if we didn't have government, these things would happen. These things are happening right now, and it's all around you. I've got an example of this exploded cell phone as one example of spontaneous order, but it's not one single company that makes a cell phone. It's hundreds, if not thousands of companies, if you include the software, that are doing everything from mining the materials, making the glass, the battery, the Wi-Fi transmitter, the software that powers the device. And there's no central hierarchical control over that process at all from Washington, D.C. or anywhere else. These are all companies that come together in an organic way, producing spontaneous order to make the most complicated machines, provide the most complicated services, and do the most complicated economic coordination without any centrally top-down coordination. Other examples are cars, computers, smartphones, bookstores, airliners, movies. One of my other favorite is the grocery store. The grocery store coordinates the activities of millions of different farmers and merchandisers and food processors and packagers and employees to ensure that you've got strawberries and avocados in January, and you've got food from 6 different continents, and it's all essentially, priced fairly. Some people compete on quality, some people compete on price, and you've got thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of choices in your average supermarket without any central control or coordination whatsoever. Now, in addition to just providing things that you buy, there are organic, grassroots, spontaneous order routinely produces public goods. Underwriters Laboratory certifies the electronics equipment in your home to ensure that it doesn't set itself on fire without government having to lift a finger or do anything. The Ocean Cleanup Project is removing plastics from rivers and the oceans. The Non-GMO Project is certifying non-GMO ingredients where the government wouldn't, where the government refused to do it, refused to protect because of political reasons and payoffs and Monsanto and other, reasons, they refused to do it. And so a private organization called the Non-GMO Project came together and it put together a voluntary system with safeguards. And I don't buy food with, grains without it saying Non-GMO Project verified. Consumer reports, tests, and reviews about everything. And I'm going to talk about the North Maine woods in detail here in a second. Rural Metro Fire provides private fire protection, EMS, rescue and medical aid at vehicle accidents, even in wildland fire protection, and for communities around the country. Detroit Threat Management provides cost-effective armed protective services in Detroit, where the monopoly police are notoriously inefficient and corrupt. I'll talk about NAV Canada in detail here in a second. Kiva provides crowdsourced capital to local entrepreneurs, just like the Small Business Administration does. Now, these are just a few examples. I could have gone on and on and on, but I hope you understand that this isn't something that I just, that is pie in the sky, but it's all happening right now. It's all happening all around you. We just want to really, really set it free. Now, here's an example that I use that just popped up. So when we were in Sedona for Liberty on the Rocks, the the Voluntaryism conference that Derek mentioned in my introduction, I'd gotten there a couple days early. We'd done some advertising in the local newspaper. I got on their email blast to ensure that our ads were being placed. And I find an article saying that Sedona had just spent $1.6 million on 8 pickleball courts. And I am, my jaw's on the ground. Now, I happen to know a guy that has a private pickleball paradise out in Memphis, Tennessee, called Willow Grove Pickleball Paradise. And I pick up the phone and I call him and I tell him what they just spent. And he begins laughing hysterically. And he begins to break down how much he spent to build his pickleball paradise. Now, Willow Grove Pickleball Paradise has 6 outdoor courts that he spent, plus 2 bathrooms. There are no bathrooms in Sedona one, that he spent less than $100,000 to build those 6 courts and those 2 bathrooms, including the lights and the fencing and all of the amenities that Sedona has. He's currently building 5 more additional courts that will be indoor climate-controlled courts, and he's going to pay somewhere between $325,000 and $350,000 for those courts. It is a paradise. It's set on a bucolic lake. He's got horses and mules that will literally come up to the fence and let you pet them. He's got dozens of different exotic chickens of all these varieties that are running around on the place. It's beautiful. And he charges $5 a day to play all day. You can come and go. If you buy a monthly or a yearly deal, it gets even cheaper than that. If you don't have the money, he'll let you play for free. Okay? And so this guy is providing the exact same service for the community. He's providing a better level of service for the community that has more courts, that has indoor courts. And he's doing it without any violence. He's doing it without any extortion. And he's doing a better job as just one example on the local level of how the free market provides public services for free without the violence and the extortion of government. Now, pickleball, that's simple, right? Anybody can go build a pickleball court. You just make a flat place, and there's lots of companies that can do that. What about really complicated things? Well, surely we need government for really, really complicated things, right? So a lot of people don't know this, but Canada privatized their air traffic control in 1996. The private company is called NAV Canada. They have 1,900 air traffic controllers, 650 flight service specialists, 700 technologists, computer programmers, and IT folks. They manage 12 million aircraft movements a year. They have 40,000 customers, private pilots, airlines, things like that. They're covering 18 million square kilometers. They have 42 control towers. They have 7 area control centers. They have 46 radar sites, 15 ADS ground sites. It's the second largest air navigation provider by volume in the world. No government, and planes are not falling out of the sky in Canada. Now, a lot of people don't know this, but before there was government unemployment insurance and disability and Medicare and Medicaid, there was something called mutual aid societies. And mutual aid societies provided many of the exact same benefits that the government provides to the poor, the needy, and the disadvantaged today. There was something called lodge practice, where the mutual aid societies would actually hire a doctor that would work for the mutual aid societies and provide home health calls. What's it called? I forgot what it's called. It's been so long. He'd go to your house and provide medical care. They worked for you. They were on your side. They were in the same mutual aid society that you were in. The AMA didn't like that, and they had the government run lodge practice out of businesses. And get this, you ready for this? The mutual aid societies competed with each other on who would provide better benefits for their members, because they wanted you in the Elks or the Rotary Club or whatever it is. They didn't want you to go to the other one, so they competed to see who would offer better benefits to their members. Now, surely, if we didn't have government, then there wouldn't be national parks, and who would protect the environment, and who will do that? Again, a lot of people don't realize this, but up in Maine, there's an area called the North Maine Woods. The North Maine Woods is 3.5 million acres of privately protected forest in Maine. It's mostly timber companies, but there's privately owned conservation areas. There's private landowners. They all get together in the North Maine Woods. There's an organization that manages everything. It's twice the size of the state of Massachusetts. It has all of the amenities that you would expect from a private park, from a national park, everything like that. You can go hiking, camping, four-wheeling, snowmobiling, and hunting. Okay, you've got everything that you would find in a private park without the waste, fraud, abuse, and extortion. Now, voluntarism doesn't mean there's no organization. Now, here's an example. So at towns and cities, how would all of that be managed? Who would provide the water and the streets and everything like that? So this is not something that I just cherry picked. This is where I used to live. This is just my community. This is me just showing you where I used to live in Virginia. It's called the Ashburn Village, 1,500 acres, 5,000 residential units, 15,000 residents. We had 4 recreation centers, 4 outdoor pools, 1 indoor pool, full weight room, 12 outdoor tennis courts, 4 indoor tennis courts, full gymnasium, indoors and outdoors basketball courts, weight room, sauna, steam room, everything that you would expect from a government community center or whatever. The homeowners association manages everything. There's no violence or extortion. If you don't want to live there, you can move and you can go someplace that doesn't have those amenities, but that's all going on without it. Now, again, a lot of people don't realize this is going on. One more example, this is Prospera in Honduras. It's a free private city. It's located on the island of Roatan off the coast of Honduras. It's in something called a special economic zone. They negotiated a sovereignty with the government of Honduras, where the laws of Honduras do not apply to Prospera. And so it's a private city where they've got some of the strongest private property protections in the world. They have some of the strongest economic freedom in the world. There's been over $120 million invested to date. This is old. It's probably greater than that. There's 200 plus businesses that have relocated there or incorporated there. They have a 5% flat tax on gross income for individuals and an effective 1% flat tax on gross income for legal entities and businesses. They operate Pristine Bay Resort. called St. John's in St. John's Bay. They have the tallest residential building in Honduras. They have an 18-hole Pete Dye designed golf course, private villas, a Bitcoin center, a scuba shop. They're doing it all without extortion. You decide if you want to live there, if you want to be under their laws. If you don't like it, you can go somewhere else. All of this is not pie in the sky. It's all happening all around you. Now, to wrap it all up, this is the benefit of more freedom, because more freedom means more prosperity for everybody in the society. And so this is an index called Economic Freedom in the World. It's put on by it's organized, and the data is collected by the Fraser Institute, which is a free market think tank in Canada. And what you're looking at is the kind of dark green is the top 10% freest jurisdictions, countries in the world. The lighter green is the next 20%, or sorry, it's the top 20%, the next 20%. So each of those is a segment of how much they measure, how much economic freedom you are. And so the dark green is the people that have the most freedom. The light green is the next most freedom, middle amount of freedom, less freedom, and the least amount of freedom. And so whether it's life expectancy in years, the more freedom equals more life expectancy. More freedom equals less children in the labor force. More freedom equals the poorest 10% having a greater share of the national income than everyone else. The income level of the poorest 10% is dramatically higher in countries where you've got the most freedom. The most freedom leads to a higher income per capita. More freedom equals a higher average growth rate for your economy. More freedom equals dramatically more investment of capital, because who wants to invest in countries that don't have freedom? Who wants to live in countries that don't have freedom? And the areas that have the most freedom have dramatically less unemployment. And so we know that the more freedom you have, the more prosperity that the society as a whole has. And so what voluntarists want to do is we want to maximize the amount of personal and economic freedom for everybody so that we can maximize economic prosperity. I mentioned that's the end of my speech. I mentioned I've got a book coming out called Voluntaryism, How the Onlyism Fair for Everyone leads to harmony and prosperity for all. A lot of the visualizations that you saw from, in this presentation are from the book. We're accepting pre-orders, and we're trying to raise $20,000 to finish it up. So if you're interested in seeing a world of more freedom and communicating that good news message, please find me and talk to me after the presentation. I mentioned we're a public policy organization, principled, very voluntarist perspective. And the final thing is I'll make a pitch. I'm doing another speech later today on how to arrest the organized crime deep state for $1 million using the uniformed Secret Service, Capitol Police, and DC law enforcement. That is guaranteed to be interesting. And I'll be back here at 5 o'clock. So if you want to do that, join us. And here's all my contact information. And I wanted to just say, oh yeah, and you can find it on Substack at Art of Liberty. You'll be able to find this and all the slides and all of my original writings at artofliberty.substack.com. That's it. I want to thank everybody for your kind attention.
Make some noise for Etienne, everybody.